Social isolation is one of the defining themes of today's society, and it's not just a holdover from pandemic social distancing and working from home. Americans have increasingly been running home to relish solitude over decades, and that is the topic of Atlantic's February cover story. It is titled "The Antisocial Century" by Derek Thompson. In it, he dives into the ways all of us are choosing to spend time away from other people, and whether or not it's good for us. Derek Thompson joins us now. Good morning.
Derek, so glad to have you here in a room by yourself in a state far away from New York. Writing is lonely business.
That's right.
I wanted to point out a very important distinction and then get to the main thesis, what you're arguing here. So we talk about a loneliness epidemic. People talk about the crisis of loneliness in America, but what you point out is that a lot of people hearing my voice right now may not actually feel lonely, but based on all the data and the argument that you've pulled together, they're still spending a lot of time alone, and that time alone is contributing to a problem. Do I have that right?
Yeah, you do have that right. There's a difference between aloneness and loneliness. I mean, there's many times that I spend alone. You know, I'm the father of a 17-month-old, so there's times when I spend alone at a bar or, just like having a drink by myself, and I'm like, oh my God, thank God, this is the next thing to heaven. Sometimes being in a state of quiet by yourself is a lovely thing. But chronic loneliness, being alone day after day, being alone more year after year, that's a real problem. That tends to correlate with much less happiness and with serious problems both for individual health and I think for community health. And what we see in the data is that Americans aren't just spending more time alone year after year, decade after decade. There's actually never been a period in recorded history when Americans have spent so little time doing face-to-face socializing and so much time being alone. I mean, that's according to official government records. So that's the real problem here. It is social isolation, not just periodic loneliness.
And
go ahead.
Go ahead. What's problematic with that, Derek? I mean, everybody needs a little me time, right? Isn't there also an argument for recharging in order to be a better person in society?
There's a very strong argument for a little bit of me time. I mean, I think it's really important for people to find quiet in their lives in order to recharge. But one thing that I think our devices, our phones, our screens do is they make our alone time more crowded, because when we're alone, what do? We pull out our phones and we spend time in the minds and crowds of other people, which are often very anxious, often very angry, often very negative and emotional. And sometimes when we're in a crowd, what do? We feel a little bit of social anxiety, we pull out our phones, and suddenly we're alone. So in a weird, almost paradoxical way, our alone time is more crowded than it used to be, and our time in crowds is more lonely than it used to be. And this makes it harder, I think, to have true social connection. And so I think it's really important to recognize that, yes, of course, it's great that people have time to be alone, time to find real quiet. But the actual problem we're talking about here is not periodic quiet. It's the fact that Americans, the choices they make in the world that we've constructed in the physical world, are experiencing a kind of social isolation that we've never had before in this country. And I think that's a social experiment that has gone awry.
So, Derek, it sounds like your advice to people, if I would turn your article into a self-help bullet point, would be call a friend today. Make a plan to see that friend in real life and put the phone down while you're together.
What I want to do with this article is I want to hold up a mirror to Americans' behavior. I think we've made a lot of choices with our lives without recognizing the cost of those choices. We watch Netflix more than we used to. We stay at home much more than we used to. We spend 99 extra minutes at home per day, not just working, but eating and praying and doing just about every other activity than we did just 20 years ago. We make lots of decisions based on convenience and technology to spend more time by ourselves. And what I want to do with this is to hold up like a receipt and say, this is what you've bought with your decisions. You've bought more alone time than ever. And here are all these psychologists that I've spoken to who say that chronic social isolation makes us more unhappy as individuals and makes us more unhealthy as a community. So yes, the individual choice here can be call a friend, see someone, don't celebrate the cancellation of that plan, make another plan. But also I think it's important to say that these are collective action problems. If your friends are hanging out more, it's easier to make a plan. If your friends are making more dinner parties, it's easier to make the next dinner party. So yes, we can solve these problems as individuals, but they really do need to be solved at the level of a community.
I'm here in party at Derek's house tonight. Watch party for the farewell address.
Let's do it.
BYOB.
Why don't you guys come over
Great,
this
we got
weekend?
space.
I'll do a pop by.
Okay, you guys should all bring the kids.
Okay.
That'd be great. All right, Derek Thompson, thank you so much.